Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. In the last video, we talked about background vocals and we came up with these beautiful parts. But I want to focus in on this acoustic guitar. So you may recall in the last video, if you haven't watched it already, you can go watch it after this. I asked on Facebook for a chord progression and I got one, and then I played it very quickly so I could do the background vocal parts for that video. And the way I recorded it, actually, you may have seen in some of my other videos, I have a microphone here on a big boom stand that hangs from over the back of my desk, and it drops down in front of my face so I don't have a stand around me so my arms and guitars and things don't hit the stand. Super convenient. Well, I was wanting to record this guitar part, but I didn't have a microphone set up, and I just wanted to do the background vocals. So I just stood with my guitar next to this microphone that's in front of my face. I put my foot up on the chair, propped my guitar on my leg, and I just played. I didn't even have headphones on. I just positioned it where I thought it probably would work okay, set the level, recorded it, and then just went about my business. And what ended up happening is the recording itself isn't super great. It's usable, but it's not great. And while I know I'm a big fan of hounding on the fact that we need to get it right at the source, that you can't fix a bad recording, we all have those days where we get a recording that could be better and we just don't want to go back and re-record it, or more likely we get tracks from someone else to mix and we can't change the recording because we're just doing the mixing. And so I thought this would be good to talk about today, how to EQ a less than perfect acoustic guitar part to make it nice and usable. So here is the raw part that I recorded. As you'll hear, it's just got a lot of boominess to it that really shouldn't be there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So by no means is this unusable. It's just got, as it is right now, I can't quite use that in the mix. It's got too much, it's got some low mid and low end problems. Now, one thing we have to think about before we start EQing is, what's the purpose of this guitar? Is it something that's going to be by itself, or is it going to be in the middle of a dense mix? That's going to change how we're going to think about EQ. For example, if this is going to be in a big rock mix and there's drums and bass and everything else, we maybe could get away with something that sounds like this. But for our purposes today, let's assume that this is going to be a lot like the way we hear it now. This is the primary instrument, and we want to hear a nice, full-sounding acoustic guitar. So the first thing we need to do is identify, what are the problems? What's keeping us from getting the sound that we want? What are the things that need to change so that we can say this guitar sounds like we want it to sound in a mix? It's important we don't gloss over this. A big part of me wants to say, okay, now reach for your EQ and go to this frequency and pull it out. But that's not helpful for anybody but me and my guitar part. When you get a guitar that's maybe slightly different from this one, how do you identify where to use the EQ, where to make the adjustments? That's what I want to talk about. And then, of course, we'll make the adjustments as well. So before I say anything, let's just listen to this again and make some mental notes of where some problems are in this. I'll have the EQ open as a little bit of a cheat sheet, but I really want you to use your ears over your eyes and listen to what changes need to be made. Maybe even write it down. Let's try it. Okay, I'm going to give it to you one more time, just so you hear it again before I taint you with my own advice and my own opinion. So listen to it once more. Okay, here's what I hear. And if you're not there yet, go back and listen to that a few more times. But this is where I'm going to tell you what I hear. I think about things like EQ in terms of, what are the biggest problems? What's the biggest thing raising its hand saying, I'm a problem child, fix me? And to me, that's the low end. There's this low mid thing that's happening. Specifically, there's this foo, boo, boo sound every time I strum the guitar. That's just more of just this, almost like a drum sound, a percussive element. almost sounds like a snare drum or a tom drum. When you hit it, kind of that boom, boom, it's coming off my guitar and getting picked up. The other thing I hear is this guitar is, if I could visualize the EQ curve, we can even look at it now, there's not as much highs as there are low mids. So I want some more highs, but I also need to tame these low mids, and then perhaps the mid-range as well might be a little wonky. I'm thinking about things in terms of balance. I'm always, always, always thinking in terms of balance. Not how do I make this EQ curve look right, but how do I hear the guitar in a balanced form, much like I would hear it if I'm sitting here playing it. When I play the guitar sitting in my room, I don't hear that boop, boop, that sound. Let me isolate it here so you can hear what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this stuff. Okay, you can hear it a little bit there. Let me go find that frequency and boost it. That's gonna be the first thing we're gonna do with EQ. Here we go. So one of the things to look out for when you have a consistent, you can even see it in the waveform. It's a big, every time I hit the down strum, there's a big bump there. But we're hearing it in this frequency, which happens to be 173 hertz. And we're hearing it as this whoop, whoop. That's, some of it's going to be specific notes that I'm playing, but I noticed that the little whoompy sound that we're hearing is actually happening everything. No matter what chord I'm playing, that whoop is coming through. It's just a consistent sound coming off of my guitar. Because the microphone was where it was, it picked that up more than we'd like it to. So we've boosted it tremendously. Let's listen to it again. You can hear it with the boost. I'm playing several different chords, and each time I strum hard, it goes boom, boom. That's what I was hearing. If we take the EQ off, you can hear it. It's still there. It's not boosted, but it's there. So what I want to be careful of is I don't want to lose low end. I don't want to make this guitar sound thin. A lot of folks would say, well, you know, that's got too much of that bottom end, so we're going to roll it up here. I don't know what that voice was, but here it is. And they'll say, ha, I've solved the problem. So before, after. True, it's not muddy anymore, but it also sucks. It doesn't sound good. This is thin and doesn't sound like any acoustic guitar I would ever want to play. I get a lot of songs when I do critiques for folks that sound like that, both electric and acoustic guitar. People are so afraid of having a muddy sounding guitar track that they make it sound lifeless and thin and brittle and anemic. So while I may do a high pass filter somewhere down here just as a safety precaution, that's not the answer to this problem. All right, so we identified 173 or somewhere thereabouts is the culprit. So we're going to take that EQ and we're going to cut it fairly narrow. We don't want to get rid of all the lows. Like I just said, I just demonstrated. That's why we don't want all the lows to go away. I want there to still be some deep bass sound to this guitar. But right now, this frequency is hogging all the attention. So let's bring it down a good 10 dB or so, and let's see if we can fix it. Good rule of thumb that I like to think about when I'm doing these kind of notchy sort of EQs where I'm taking a specific frequency way out, the further down I go with the cut, I'll try to narrow things up so that I'm not taking a huge chunk of frequencies with me. So if I'm up here, I'll keep it kind of a little bit wider, but if I'm getting way down here, I'll try to narrow it up and play with this width a little bit so that we're not sacrificing too much warmth just to get rid of this one troublesome frequency. Visually, if I were to say, hey, is this the right EQ for that guitar? And you were just looking at it as a picture on the screen, you and I both would probably say, nah, it looks a little dramatic. Because, I mean, we're cutting 15 dB. That can't be right. Guess what? That's the before. That's the after. Here's the before. So what a lot of people would do is they would go down to below 100 hertz and try to take these frequencies down. And what they end up with is there's no low end, no bass, but then there's also still that boom, boom sound coming through. And they'll scratch their heads, super confused. I don't understand. I just removed a huge amount of frequencies at 80 hertz. Why am I still hearing that? It's because the problem isn't at 80 hertz. It's double that. It's almost an octave up from 80 at 173. That's the problem. Listen to it go away. Now here's something I like to do here. Since we're thinking about low end, I'll go take this low EQ now, let's zoom in, and I'll do just the slightest little boost down here, just in the really deep low end, just to give it, we've taken away some of the life of the guitar here, and it's been good. Let's reintroduce just a little bit of low end here. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, in this example, it just makes it a little muddier. I don't necessarily love that, but that is something that sometimes works. So now, if we take a step back, let's re-listen to the guitar. What else does it need, if anything? All right, we did some cutting to take care of that big whoompiness that was happening, but it's still not as clear as I'd like it to be. So I'm going to do a boost up around 8K just to bring in some clarity. Just a nice wide kind of boost, not that wide. To just bring in some of the clarity of the pick hitting the strings. That feels good to me. There's more clarity there, and that brings out to me there's a little bit of, in a lot of acoustic guitars, as great as the guitar might sound, if you've got too much in kind of the somewhere in the 1 to 3K or the 500 hertz to 3K range, it can sound really plasticky and fake, like a cheap guitar. Let me show you what I mean. Yeah, right around 2K or so, it sounds like a cheap guitar that's maybe not actually made out of wood. Well, you all know what I'm talking about. And so when we've boosted the highs up here, it's brought out a little bit of that plasticky sort of sound. While I like the clarity, I maybe want to take some of that plastic sound back so it feels like a nice, warm, wooden guitar. That feels pretty good to me. There's still a little bit extra low end down here. What I might do is take this bottom EQ, turn it into a shelf, and just take the overall low end down just a smidge. Okay, now here's the before. And here's the after. Now keep in mind, we've not done any compression. I don't even think this needs it. It sounds a lot better than it did, and this is totally usable. Now in the real world, if this was a song that I was releasing to the world, I might say, you know what? This big cut alone, I would rather just go back and re-record that guitar part. It'll just make life a lot easier, and then I might not need any EQ at all, or certainly not this much. But in a situation where this was sent to me, I can absolutely turn this into a usable guitar track 100% by using this method that I showed you here today. So if you've got some troublesome acoustic guitars, go try something like this. The exact frequencies will be different, but the concept of how we search and hunt out those frequencies and how we deal with them is pretty much the same from one guitar to the next. If you want more mixing tips from me, check out my 5-step mix guide at 5stepmix.com. It'll make your mixes better, I promise. Till next time, see ya.